Now you can go.
We're good.
Okay, I would like to call the meeting to order at 5:30 p.m. I say November 18th, 2025. Roll call, Chris.
Miss Proper, Mr. Giller, Mr. Lees,
Here.
Mr. Smith,
Here.
Mr. Guerra,
Here.
Miss Gort,
Here.
and Mr. Frechter.
Here.
Okay, planning commissioners, any changes to the minutes? If none, they are approved. Any changes to the agenda, Chris?
No changes tonight.
I'm going to open the meeting to public comment on historic preservation issues that are not on the agenda this evening. As part of a certified local government, we are asked to take public comment on historic preservation issues in the community. With that, I will open the meeting to any public comment. Please raise your hand with the icon at the bottom of your screen or press *9 if you are attending the meeting by phone, and then *6 to unmute yourself.
There's no one that wishes to comment.
Okay, we'll move on to, are there any call-ups on the consent calendar? The consent calendar stands as approved. Work sessions. Ask staff to present. I guess we're ready.
Okay.
I did do the minutes, right? Did I? Okay. Can't remember what I've done.
Caught up. We're ahead of schedule, Elaine. Driving the meeting. All right. Well,
And Susan is online, just
Yeah.
because.
I got it noted here and the roll call. So we got you marked down as attending, Susan. But we're kind of here for our second go around for neighborhood preservation policy, work session. As noted in the memo, the council recently adopted the phase 1 code amendments related to our neighborhood preservation policies. And those included eliminating positive points for landscaping for single family or individual single family or duplex properties. They eliminated relative setbacks and then took those relative setbacks that were greater than the absolutes and adopted those as the absolute setback. And be happy to explain that if anyone has any questions. And then reduced the amount of positive points possible for EV chargers down to 1 positive point if you did 2 or more chargers from a max. Previously, it was a maximum of 3 points. And that was a result of feedback from both. We had a focus group of architects, designers, builders that we had kind of our kickoff public outreach in the spring. Then we brought it to Planning Commission for your feedback, and then took it to the public over 2 open houses. The second of which was actually somewhat well attended. I think we had about 35 people and a council member there present. And based on that feedback, we adopted that phase 1. But with the adoption of the phase 1, the council had the desire to look at, based on the feedback, look at some additional policy amendments. There's quite a bit of feedback that we tend to trim out the positive point opportunities and then ratchet up the negative points. And that was something that was somewhat consistent kind of at all stages of the public outreach. So based on that, the council asked us to go back and think about some different items that we might possibly want to incentivize in the community, understanding that we no longer feel the need to incentivize EV chargers or landscaping to the extent we did previously. Also, they were interested in pursuing some type of bulk plane, for lack of a better term, because they had directed us not to reduce the overall allowed density anymore, but really the next logical steps of kind of shrinking the building footprint, if you will, is by reducing the setbacks, which they previously did, and then doing something related to building height. But they also acknowledged that building height for homes that are on kind of a steep slope, it gets a little tricky if you start cutting. So a reduction in building height kind of disproportionately affects certain properties. So that's why they were interested in something that was more in line with a bulk plane or something else really designed to reduce the appearance of mass was really the goal for phase two. So based on that feedback, we formed a small working group that Mike Giller was gracious enough to join and put his architectural experience to use. And then we also had Andy Stabile, who is a planning commissioner in Frisco, but also a longtime architect in the community. Tim Gherkin, also a fairly long-term architect. I think he's practiced for about 20 years from various firms. And then Mickey Florio, who is probably practiced for about 15 years, but really probably does 2/3 of his work outside of the community. So we thought that was a nice mix of all having ties to the community, but also having some other experience with other codes as well. So really researching those three kind of additional I guess subgroups of policy. So we'll start off with, well, label the bulk plane discussion, but very quickly it kind of actually progressed into more support for limiting the amount of footage above the main level, and also requiring more breaks in the wall plane, the breakup, the appearance of massing, and kind of that blank facade. So these meetings, we had 2 hour-and-a-half meetings that seemed like we flew by. Lots of really good discussion, and actually different vantage points, I think, were discussed in the meeting. But ultimately, these were kind of the consensus points after kind of having really good discussion of pros and cons. So we looked at a number of communities, mainly in Colorado, both related to bulk plane, and then also limiting floor area and breaking up the wall planes. And considering most of our NPP neighborhoods are homes or lots that are at least a quarter acre, if not a half acre in size, I think the group kind of latched on to that bulk plane might not be the most effective tool in terms of kind of eliminating the appearance of a bulky home. And part of that is it's usually based on where the setbacks are and then kind of drawing a line to the center of the building. And it's typically used on lots that are maybe a little narrower, a more traditional, semi-urbanized lot, if you will, to preserve solar access from the side. There are good examples like Mike's neighborhood down in Evergreen that have utilized it on larger lots, and then it's kind of combined with metrics for slope. Yeah, and I guess to back up a little bit, I'm gonna see. I'm not sure that I have a.
See if I can find something quickly.
I can pull it and then probably connect in. I might switch spots here.
Um, I don't know what you're looking for, but Boulder, Colorado.gov has a really good one I could forward you, but
Yeah,
you have one that's.
Up here too, so.
Oh, the same thing on the
visual. Just thinking a good visual might. Yeah, Fresco Town Code has a good visual one. I'm trying to pull it up.
Wheat Ridge, actually, we used in the group and it showed a bunch of different, but I think this one, we'll kind of do it. And you can see that essentially the establishment of the bulk plane is set at the setback, the required setback for the home. And then you pick an angle to kind of, I guess, go towards the center. And it's supposed to kind of, step down the building so that most of the mass or the majority of the mass is located on the lower level. But with the larger lots in our area, sometimes you're not necessarily building all the way to the setback. So you might be kind of setting a three-dimensional envelope where the edge of the building is never going to touch or intersect with the angled plane, if you will, where it would if you're, like on a smaller lot, it's probably less than 50 feet or so. So that was one of the reasons where we thought that either requiring a maximum floor area above the main level and subsequent levels where you can't build to the edges for homes that are, and the caveat being homes over 4,500 square feet, because we did think about some of the neighborhoods such as the Weisshorn where you do have a smaller lot, but then if you required, breaks in the home where it may kind of compromise the type of structure you could build. Because it's mainly the larger homes over that square footage that we're getting the complaints about related to the appearance of mass. When discussing treatments, I think the group thought that either adopting an absolute or a relative policy could work. And so kind of taking that feedback at the staff level, we kicked it around and proposed instituting an absolute policy that limits the maximum amount of floor area above the main level. But then in terms of establishing the breaks in the wall plane, treat that as a relative policy. So it does give you a little bit of flexibility in design. Because generally, if you start accruing points at that level, you'll probably have to make some trade-offs in other areas to not take so many points that you don't have a provable project. And also typically, if you look at our code, policy 5R is where most of the general architectural standards live versus policy 5A. So it'd be more consistent, but we're definitely open to either of those options and kind of throwing it out to the planning commission. And looking for the guidelines in terms of the breaks in wall plane and such. I'm gonna get back to my notes here. In the attachment that we have for some potential code language, this is kind of a conglomeration of other policies that we investigated as written in, where it seemed like roughly 4 feet was the typical kind of wall plane break, the kind of break up that completely linear facade or have a building get bent at least 15 degrees, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but when you actually look at in a diagram, there's a clear, it looks kind of like a boomerang or a little bit more aggressively. That was actually one of Sarah's questions we were looking at. She's like, well, what does that actually look like? So there is a very noticeable bend in the building. And then the types of treatments that you can use in addition to the wall planes that kind of break up that plane facade could be any combination of, lower roofs or decks or porches or other things just to kind of break up that blank facade. But again, this is just, from some of the guidance we had from the work group, as well as looking at a variety of codes. This is our kind of Frankenstein, if you will, policy we put together for, to get some feedback on.
Chris, this is a work session. Can I ask a question?
Absolutely. And I think this is a good jumping off point for questions related to it, or even comments.
Just back up to the second paragraph on the first page of the attachment thing. For single-family homes and duplexes outside of the conservation district with lofted areas with a floor to ceiling height greater than 12 feet, the floor area density of this portion, what do you mean by this portion? Does that mean where it actually has a loft that you can stand on that's less than 5 feet? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, and really this section, and this is something I think that we're trying to get the wording right so that it reads correctly, but what we're trying to accomplish is we're trying to establish a maximum floor area for every floor above the main level. But in theory, you could maybe get around it if you didn't count that lofted area for really tall areas that went above 12 feet in height, because you could say, well, this doesn't count. So then I'm still to build a big rectangle because I've carved out, a living room that goes up, 24 feet instead.
Specifically talking about floor area and that, just to have a living room with lofted 20-foot ceilings doesn't add any square footage.
It doesn't, but it can add to the appearance of how big the home looks. We actually have similar language in the historic district because, again, I think when we originally established that, and we have obviously our above ground density maximums, a trick was to kind of loft everything and you could build a bigger building. And so we've probably for over 25 years, we've had a carve out where we essentially count the density double if you go over a certain floor to ceiling height on that first level.
So is that so if your floors can be 12 feet and then you could do 5 feet kind of on your second level, because that doesn't count as an official floor livable space. So you'd have 17 feet with nothing, like that's, I guess.
Yeah, I think we probably need the fine tune it. Obviously if we have like a low head height, anything over 5 feet floor to ceiling does not count. I don't know that we'd want. Well, I guess I'll leave it to you if we want to go to 17 feet before we start counting double. But I think that the idea is not to have like a third of the structure vaulted, so then you can just build a rectangle without having any kind of jogs or break in kind of that second level.
So Vail doubles the density that they count if the room is vaulted to 16 feet or higher. Part of the thinking on that is you could come in with a floor, an intermediate floor, and build a level in the vaulted ceiling area.
So are you saying that if they have 1,000 square feet of space and
it's 20 feet tall, that's 2,000 square feet of density.
density?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think, we kind of look at, we look at density from two standpoints. I think mainly we look at just from the overall intensity. If you have, in theory, a larger structure, you have more programming, it's more intense. But I think in this case, it's also looking at it from the visual standpoint. So if you're able to increase your square footage, or kind of the balloon, if you will, if the balloon is filled greater because you don't have any floor above a lofted space, this from the street makes it look like a much larger building.
Right.
And so I think that's what we're trying to accomplish. And as we're trying to draft a bunch of kind of novel code here, I don't know that we completely hit it in terms of how it's written, admittedly. But I think that's the intent anyway.
And is there a real definitive definition for main level?
Yeah.
And that's another one, we were trying to focus on what the intent was, but we acknowledge that with anything, when you identify a term like that, and that's a great pickup, we're like, let's identify if people are interested in that, and then we probably need to come up with a definition for what main level is, because it's only as good as,
Yeah, I'm just thinking about on steep slopes where you might enter and it's like actually like 3 floors or 3
Mhm.
levels, or a daylight basement,
Well,
or
split foyer is a good example
or a
of
split
that.
level, yeah.
Split level, yeah.
So,
Yeah, I have the same comment. And if you look up like industry term for main level, it usually is where your kitchen, living room, dining room is. Sometimes it's
I
where you
think-
enter.
I think we would try and ground it somewhat to grade, because otherwise you could, I mean, we even see homes now, like there's quite a few out in the Highlands Riverfront where actually the living area is on the second floor. So I think we want to make sure that we have some kind of grounding to it, but we don't want to penalize people that are on, have a walkout, downhill situation. But we also don't want to make it where you could just put everything up and then it kind of defeats the purpose of having that limitation on floor area on the higher levels.
Susan,
Are we,
if Susan has anything, she's kind of, Susan, did you have anything? Maybe. Stick your hand up if you do. I can't hear you. I think Susan's having a hard time getting on. Do you guys have to do something?
Kelly,
Can you
is
hear
muted?
Susan?
She
I
muted.
can hear Susan, but it looks like she's unmuted.
Can you hear us, Susan? All right, Susan, we'll come back to you.
Is there a volume for the speaker here?
doesn't look like she's tuned into us.
Susan sends smoke signals.
She's watching.
I have a
Netflix.
question.
She's waving.
Oh,
You have something?
Yeah, we have some.
All right, well, Susan, we'll get back to you. I'll let Ethan talk here while they play around.
on the,
You can send questions via.
floor to ceiling height greater than 12 feet, we're talking about a plate level. Yes, on the 12 foot? Or are we talking about the ridge level? Ridge height? For single family homes and
Mhm.
duplex outside of conservation lofted areas, a floor to ceiling height greater than 12 feet. What's the ceiling height?
Good question.
I think it
At the
would be,
plate height or if it's a gable roof, is that the ridge height?
I think it would be I think we'd probably look at the plate height. I mean,
Or is it the mean between the two?
it is a good question. I think we're thinking in terms of lofted, there's just a level where you would have the roof, but I guess I would look for you guys, for your recommendation, but I think in my mind, as I was probably, working on that, I'm thinking more of a plate height than I am, than a,
And along those lines, we are limited by height. So if you have a wide building and a plate height is the height, you're gonna have to bring down that plate height to get within 35 feet if you've got a 12-12 ceiling. You follow me? So
Mhm.
it is regulated. I was just wondering what we're calling, we should quantify what that.
No, I think it is a good question. I think in my mind, I was thinking plate height, but hearing it out loud,
Well, with the code, specificity is very important,
mhm.
because people need to interpret it so that they can build or design in accordance with what the code actually says.
And then if you have a shed roof, it should be the lower plate height or the height that's the heel is sitting on, right? So to define that.
I mean, I'm interested, in terms of what you think is preferable of those two options, but
Well.
really anyone on the,
Back to the Vale 16-foot example, it's anywhere the finished space is 16 feet from the floor to the bottom of the finished ceiling, which sort of covers any possibility. I mean, that's
Explain that.
uh, um, if you have 1,000 square foot living room and you want a vaulted ceiling and the vaulted ceiling is 16 feet tall or taller, then it counts as double.
But where is the vaulted ceiling? If it's,
That's my point. If it's,
So like on this one, it has,
if it's the upper third, then it's only the upper third. If it's the upper half, it's the upper half. You know, it's wherever 16 feet falls. If it falls at the,
oh, okay, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
and you know, it's,
The angle.
what's interesting, sometimes it happens when your ceiling goes straight out over a stairway, but your stairs go
Yep.
down. So sometimes you catch some
That's a
vaulted,
good point.
yeah. And that, to be honest with you,
I mean, it's similar to how we count density, like it's let's use like a Wellington house, for example. There's a section where the wall is maybe only like 4 feet,
yeah,
where the gable comes down and then quickly it gets to the 5 feet. But that section from the 5 to the wall there does not count as actual square footage, under our
Yeah.
density. So it would be consistent, but
yeah, I think
I'm-
16 is generous. I think that's
think so
a
too.
lot. I really do.
I think it's very generous
Yeah.
because, I mean, people love these huge houses with these huge vaulted ceilings.
Right.
And then you've got a form.
Hello?
oh, we can hear
There you are.
Yay, Susan.
Susan. Oh, but I can't hear you very well.
Are you able to turn up the volume of the Zoom meeting on the iPhone? You should be able to put it on speaker.
It is on speaker.
Okay.
Ethan, I think,
Piece of paper and a cone.
Ethan, I think that,
Oh, this is better. Okay.
as did you, with the plates and the 35-foot limit, that's kind of self-limiting.
It does. I like what Mike said. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
It
But
does.
maybe it's a combination of the two, just for clarity.
Yeah.
Any ceiling form that reaches 16 feet.
Finished
That's
ceiling.
it. That's
Yeah.
that's.
That's the max you can go to, or that's once you hit that, then you're doing
Okay, so
double
thinking about
density.
that, but then your gable can continue beyond that.
It just counts as double.
Anything, any square footage within that. So if you have a 20-foot wide building and the plate's at 14 and you have a 12-12, so then you're coming into 10 feet. From that 10 feet, 20 by 20 by 10 would be your square footage that is added, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I guess, do you think there's any chance that we would be then incentivizing flat roofs or roofs that have a kind of a low pitch to it?
Really,
Or-
actually, it might be just the opposite because that would have a higher percentage of the floor
Right.
area that is higher.
Right.
Gable
The
inherently.
Gable limits it.
Yeah. It's probably worth offline looking at the Vail code and seeing
Okay.
how that works.
I mean, I guess I'd be interested collectively as a group if you prefer one or the other. I don't think at a staff level, I mean, if you like the idea of essentially double counting for lofted spaces, I think we're absolutely willing to take your advice.
I would
Which method of the two you prefer?
Yeah. So there's in architecture, there's kind of ratios or proportions. And as rooms get to certain dimensions, the ceilings get higher. You see this a lot in like ballrooms or churches, things like that. But I'm thinking of the one on the corner of it's the east-west one that's driven a lot of this discussion. And in Gold Flake. But at any rate, as that
In Weisshorn on Wellington.
yeah, thank you. That living room is massive. And the ceiling in that living room is probably 20 feet. You could play a basketball game in that
Mhm.
ceiling. I think that's what we're trying to avoid.
Mm-hmm.
That's what people want.
Right. But if they want
They want it
that,
sloped from,
If they want that, then they basically have to take bulk away from the house somewhere else. I think that's what,
And also the flat roof, they'll be discouraged because if they have a flat or very shallow roof, they're gonna need heat tape and they're gonna be limited on how much heat tape they can have, or they'll have negative points for that. So and
Flat
that's
roofs
gonna
don't
contribute
necessarily
more.
drive heat tape.
No, oh, no.
Actually, steeper roofs with dormers and
Valleys,
valleys
yes.
drive it.
Okay.
offline, let's take a look at that Vail code and just see how it's detailed out.
See that, but I lean towards that policy.
Yeah.
I think that 16 feet might be a bit high. I think I,
That's basically a two-story room.
yes.
And that goes back to this proportion thing. If you've got a two-story room, that room needs to be at least 30 by 50, 20 by 30. I mean, it needs to be a couple thousand square foot room or it feels cavernous. So let's look at that offline. I think we can learn from it.
Okay. I mean, I think we can, we got kind of a quick turnaround for a memo for council
Oh,
tomorrow, but I think if everyone is supportive of basically measuring to the point, there might be some points that are lower, some that are higher. And then if you're comfortable with 12 feet, or if you think it's 14, like you alluded that 16 might be high. I think we proposed at 12.
so here's another long-standing code analogy. If it's less than 5 feet, it doesn't count as finished space.
Right.
So if it's more than 12 feet, it counts as double finished space, something like that. It's something everyone can understand and the architects can design to.
I also had a suggestion to consider
12 feet
when they do the front side really high on the house. I have a picture to show that, maybe limiting how high this can
So
be.
you're talking on a shed roof.
Yeah, on a shed roof, because I mean, to me, I look at this house and I think this is the house that young people want. It's kind of shed roof. And then obviously you want it opening up to where your view is. And that's usually where everybody's looking at it down in the valley and you have all that light.
So the same rule applies, because on the back side of that, on the lower end of that shed roof, you're going to be limited there.
Yeah. But you can go, 35 feet right here. And it's pretty big. It's going to be 20 feet tall by 40 feet wide based on the bulk by what we have right now. And also, if this is the main level, like, I don't know what I would assume this would be the main level because that's where people live. But right now we don't have a definition for it. And I think talking to you guys, it sounds like the ground level is the main level. So it's,
Can you show that to the camera so Susan can see?
how do I show it to the camera?
It's up there, the camera. We're
It's
there.
so blurry though. It's so not good.
I can take it to the
Here,
speaker stand and we can move the camera.
And Susan, let's let you talk. Sorry.
Oh, not a problem. This, I share the concerns about that house on Wellington, and the mass of it. But yeah, 12 feet sounds appropriate to me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. What are you showing me? I can't see it.
The picture I printed out of a house where basically the roof's a shed roof and it just goes up towards the front of the house. So like there's this huge rectangle in the front of windows, which I think is very popular right now style. That's what
I
people
call
want.
that the Dulles Airport look.
Yeah. Well, it's like the building up on the ski slope that they built, for lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Same. Yeah, Pioneer Crossing. Yeah.
Anyway, I had more comments when we get to the discussion of the priority for positive points.
Okay. I think we can move to that if you.
I just have one, so I apologize if this is redundant, but because I missed a couple of meetings, but do these regulations, are they going to apply to all of Breckenridge or to specified neighborhoods?
So these will apply actually to all.
Okay.
Some of the other ones, like we're talking about setbacks, apply to obviously ones that don't have a building envelope, but these will apply to all neighborhoods.
Okay, because I just, just to play a little devil's advocate.
Unless it's governed by a master plan, which supersedes anything in our code.
Okay, so like, so the new neighborhood that BGV is building, would that be exempted due to their master plan?
I don't believe they have anything in there that would speak to the architectural design. They would have to comply.
I brought this point up when we were talking about requiring screening and stuff, because that's a neighborhood no one goes through. except the people that live there. So do we really care? I mean, I wonder, do we really care for these neighborhoods that are not high traffic like Weisshorn and the homes on Wellington?
But
and such?
how do you carve out an exception?
I don't know. I'm throwing it out there for discussion, you know, I'm just,
They still have neighbors that are gonna be annoyed by it.
Yeah, I think that's a slippery
Yeah.
slope.
yeah.
Like the houses up on, is it Boulder Drive? Those ones are very
Yeah.
big, Boulder Ridge. Those are very similar, but nobody drives by it, right? Other than the 4 houses down the.
Yeah, I'm throwing it out for discussion. I just, you know, I feel there are some things that are so, you know, remote. It's like, who cares, you know?
I mean, I think that's a valid point. You could also look at the totality of it and say, you know, if we're really concerned about 8 homes that are already built and the rest of it, we really don't need to go to this other level, that could be a comment as well.
Well, maybe you make it relative then. Wait, I don't.
And how does like a big 3-car garage fit into that with like maybe a second level over it? How is that? Does the garage count as square footage?
The
In
garage,
that instance?
the garage would count because it counts as density. So yeah, if you have a big 3-car garage plus, you know, a generous living area, but for the MPP neighborhoods, there is a maximum amount of density. So if you're utilizing a big 3-car garage on the main level and you have a decent amount of space, then even beyond, I think, limiting the floor area in the second, you're kind of already limiting where you can, you know, put density above the main level. But in the case, let's say if you prioritize the 3-car garage and you have only like 2 bedrooms, and then you could have just built the house kind of on top of it, even bigger, that's what limiting the floor area above the main level, I guess, would do in that case.
Yeah, that's where the main level definition would maybe come into play as well.
So let's talk about that. What's the definition of a main level? Whatever the architect puts on the plans?
No, I mean, I think that, you know, it's got to be somehow tied, I think, to grade, and I think tied to grade probably from viewing the street level.
Yes, I agree. A walkout
Yeah.
is not the main level.
Well, I think if it's a walkout and it's facing the street,
I can see
then
that.
it probably needs to be the main level because otherwise it's the start, you know, a level above. But if it's a situation where, so essentially like if it's a walkout and it's an uphill from the street, then you probably need to start with that main level down at the walkout. If it's a downhill sloping lot from the main street and there's a walkout below, then you probably need to start the main level. It's basically, I think I'm throwing this out, like kind of thinking about more on the floor, but it would be the grade level as viewed from the street.
Right,
So-
Yeah, I think I would agree with that because otherwise, if you define it just as, you know, where the main living area is, I think people could mess around with that and make a structure that had much more up above than I think what you're envisioning.
So just so we can visualize this, so, you know, looking at all these uphill lots that are in the Weisshorn neighborhood, so what we're saying is they all have walkout on that first level that you see from the street, whether it's a main entrance. Yeah, so that means the architect would just have to put a windows and a solid wall there and no doors, but if they put a door with a patio, that
I
becomes,
think you need to make a distinction.
that becomes the
between
main level.
the exterior and the interior and the function. Because if you let the interior function determine what the main level is, then you open up a whole can. of
Well, I know,
worms.
so I'm
So,
visualizing this.
Say, from the exterior, the grade, where's the front door? That's the main level. And whatever the function is, doesn't really matter.
Well, you can have an uphill lot with a walkout, but the front door is on the second level. That's how most of them are, actually.
But
And-
what we're saying this is that second level is gonna have to be smaller than that lower level. And if
Okay.
they put a third,
What I'm saying is you need to make a distinction. You can't have it both ways,
No, that-
where the living space is the main level or the grade determines the main level.
Which is what we're
You gotta
discussing.
decide one or the other.
Right.
An idea. What if we define, instead of using the main level, we say the top level cannot be more than 75% of the level below it?
Well, it depends on how many levels you have.
Mhm.
Yeah, but they can only go so high with
Upper
35 feet
quotas.
or whatever limit is.
It doesn't work for downsloping lots where you've got the majority of the living area and the primary module that's the greatest would be at grade, and
That's
then
why I was trying to visualize, Ethan.
lower below that,
Nice.
it gets
People-
smaller usually
I
because
think
you're,
you are.
and
I think I'm gonna bring this up.
Well, would be that bigger floor and it would just be the top that you don't want if they go higher.
Because some of the main levels.
Point, I had a point, at a point that I wanted to make, I did the math. If you require 75% of the floor area on the top, then that basically makes a footprint of the lower level 15% bigger. So you're cutting more into, disturbing the ground and land. So that's why I think it should be a relative policy.
But we're trying
Should have thought.
to address the massing. And so that's why that 75% works for the massing from the exterior.
Yeah, well, I think the massing problem is going to be a bigger problem because you have these sloping houses where it looks so massive in the front because you have the tall roof line.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to me, that's a lot bigger problem for the perceived mass than the how many square feet are actually on that level.
So that's a really insightful comment.
Mhm.
Traditional architecture has what they call a cascade of mass. It's highest in the center and works its way down. And the shed roof thing flips that. So if I think of like, the two places catty corner from the grocery store, that where the ski and shop is and the medical, they all have shed roofs at the entrances,
Mhm.
which increases the perceived height and scale of that
Mhm.
building. Now, it makes the entrance attractive to you. But you're right, these kind of buildings are a challenge to the massing discussion that we're having and how to write a code that works on it.
Mike, a question, we were just discussing, and I know that you're good at this. So we discussed whether the main level is the ground level on an uphill lot, but the ground level on a downhill lot, meaning as you walk in. Does that penalize one or the other? It seems like it would.
I don't know if it penalizes. That's interesting. I do agree with the previous discussion.
Meaning, and I'm pertaining to the 12-foot, the ceiling height.
Yeah. I don't know. I do think though, like Mark said, the program kind of drives what's the primary floor,
Mm-hmm.
especially on a slope lot. And I think you could capture it by, primary living spaces or living dining kitchen spaces or great room spaces. I mean, it's pretty obvious what the main level of a home is. It's a little hard to articulate, but it's pretty
I do agree with
my
that.
evergreen house is flipped. The living dining kitchen is on the second floor because it has the views. And Tim and Marty talked about that. What did they call that? A
That's this one right here.
flipped living?
Yeah.
In our meetings, Chris, Tim and Marty used a phrase several times. A flipped house or
Well,
flipped
could we
living.
say if the main level is the upper floor, you can't have another level above it? Or I guess where it could get
Well-
abused.
What we want to get back to is this cascade of mass.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how we define that. I don't entirely agree with, so I think we took a little bit of a left turn thinking that the cascade of mass has to start at the lot line. In my evergreen neighborhood, all the lots are 5 acres. So they take the bulk plane from the face of the house, and you can go up, I think it's 20, it depends upon the slope of the grade, but you can go up generally 24 to 28 feet, and then you have to start sloping. And that's regardless of where the setback lines are. So bulk plain still can work. It just isn't tied to setbacks.
Yeah, I mean, I think the three architects on the group, none of them were supportive. I mean, Mike, I think from his experience in his neighborhood is probably supportive of it. I think if you're nuanced, none of the other three architects were supportive. Andy was vehemently opposed from his experience in Frisco and thinks that it's really hard to validate without having, kind of architectural software, like at a staff level. So I think if you're looking at the range, I think Mike was probably warmly supportive from his experience in his neighborhood. And then Andy vehemently opposed and Tim and Mickey not really in favor, but not as vehemently.
Well,
Yeah, of the bulk plane. And that's kind of where we went on, what got started on these other
Definitions or, yeah.
This also touches on the issue of the ridge line and whether or not the ridge line runs parallel to the street or perpendicular to the street, which we've touched on with a lot of the buildings that we've
that's a
discussed here.
percentage thing.
Far forward, the parallel to the street ridge line is pretty important for the perception of the height of the building.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, one of the things that came out loud and clear during the process is using the Weisshorn as kind of the poster child for everything involved in this process, is that everyone, even if there was criticisms of some of the new homes, they liked the architectural diversity in that area and thought that there should be the ability to have architectural diversity, unlike a lot of the other neighborhoods that have come along since that have very tight HOA. They're like, well, we want to preserve the Weisshorn because we like it because it's different.
I'm one
And
of those who advocates for that too. There's a lot of people in the Highlands who want, the same old thing over and over again.
And so I think it's, when you start going down and ratcheting down, that's the danger, is you start kind of taking a code and getting it more into like a HOA
Exactly.
design standard. So that's kind of the nuance. It's trying to, I guess, reduce the perception of mass, but not take away the ability to have different types of architecture. And that's really the challenge of this in a nutshell.
Which addresses that photo that Elaine brought up, because I actually like that architecture.
I love it. That's why I printed it out,
But
because that's
your
what I
point
would
is
want
very
to
well
build, and
taken.
that's what people want.
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
built in my house in California. It's exactly what I got. So,
And I think the main level is the top level on that house, but
but does how do you address both?
Ah.
Because like you're saying, the Weisshorn has the diversity. You can't build a house like that in most of the neighborhoods in this town. Right?
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, most neighborhoods, we're saying this would apply, but most neighborhoods have layers of design guidelines that still go beyond this in terms of other things they require, in terms of roof pitches, in terms of things. So it's probably adding another layer to those, but honestly, you won't see any difference because their own design guidelines are still ratcheting down more than what we're proposing here.
You could build that house in Weisshorn if you build it for 4,000 total feet. But if you
Right.
want an 8,000 total foot house that's of that design, you can't do it.
you can't do it because of the,
500.
Yeah.
45.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you like that design, you build it smaller.
Mhm.
I doubt you have an 8,000 square foot house in California.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
950 square feet.
Yeah.
Small.
You're okay.
Thanks. I'm little.
Yeah.
And for the planning staff, I was looking at Aspen's requirements for roofs, and they have different requirements for like what they call a flat roof, which is lower than a 3 to 12 feet ratio. And then they have like higher pitch, they have different ones. And then for flat roof, they have even lower height max that you can go to. If you have a flat roof, it looks so much more.
Have you looked at that, Chris?
We looked at reducing reducing height overall from 35 feet. That was early on in the process. We presented that to the council. And they really did not want to reduce the height, or they just wanted to stay with 35 feet. And they tied it more to the variation in slopes. But I think it was just, they didn't want to kind of pick winners and losers in terms of height. And wanted other things to kind of control the appearance of, that was the direction we got from the first go around.
But I'm not sure they,
Though is the way we measure, if you've got a gable roof, you can actually go higher.
Right.
Because we measure the mean from the ridge down to the eave. Whereas a flat roof, it's going to get measured right at where the flat roof is.
That's not true for outside the conservation district.
It's only in the
Thought it was the middle of the,
And for multifamily, for single family, we just go to the ridge and measure
Okay.
straight down.
but what Elaine is saying makes some sense, because if you've got a 35-foot height and with a low pitched or flat roof, you can get much more massing underneath that 35.
you get all that air under the
You can get
35
much more
feet,
massing underneath that.
opposed to half of or whatever.
Yeah, but if you have a limitation on square footage and kind of requirements to step back and do other things, you would have to shrink your footprint in doing so.
Because you lose square footage because the high ceiling, is that what you're saying?
Because if you have the gabled roof and you're not kind of you're not having all that lofted space or another level, you're not using as much square footage on the second level. But if you have essentially a big rectangle and you choose to have a big rectangle, then they'll run out of, density and mass, and you also would have to jog it in
Okay.
if you have a limitation on the second level. So.
They also talked about like butterfly roofs and pitched roofs, and different kinds of roofs, which I didn't see any of that in our code. So,
See very many of those.
yeah, but they're popular right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think, because after the first meeting, Mickey, who has done some work in Aspen, he brought up, like, look at the kind of the West End design standards. And it's interesting because almost all those homes are way bigger and more and we used an example on the bulk plane utilizing theirs, and basically you just had a very tall and skinny with a gable to meet the bulk plane, but it's actually a house that we all ended up saying we thought was really cool and liked, but it was probably one that I'm not sure would go over super well with people that don't like the house that keeps getting referenced. I think we all admitted that. And
I'm one of the very few.
I think
That's a cool house. I do.
I think it's cool. It's very unique though.
I think there's more people in the community that are like that, but they just haven't spoken up. It's the people that don't like it have
Yeah,
spoken
they
up.
don't like change. But yeah, that's a different subject.
So, kind of going back to not trying to like dictate a certain architectural style. That's why we're trying to kind of stay away from some of those.
So I guess we have to come back to talking about the floor to ceiling height. Right? That's what we're getting at. And then the two main issues that I see are that floor to ceiling height and what establishes the main level.
Yeah.
How do we tackle that? I think that what Mike and Mark are saying is very valid, and I agree that common thoughts on the main level is your main living area. That's it, your kitchen and however, like you brought up, the subdivision on Monitor Drive there, there's all of those, I think, are flipped
Mhm.
in order to get the view. So now the main level is on the second level on fairly level lots, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think realistically for it to be effective, we'd probably have to figure out some way to attach it to grade versus programming.
Yes.
Otherwise, I think there'd be an easy way to game around if you wanted to have a
Okay, I want to address the other thing. I'm not sure. If you're doing it to grade, are you referring to the downhill, uphill issue? Street.
Well, I think what we were thinking of is kind of the perception of grade from the front of the house. If it's a corner lot, then it would have to be from both of those
Well,
sides.
what's the front of the house?
So I think it'd be the
Street.
so the street level.
Street.
So like if you're designing the house where you go around and the garage is in the back and you have the front door, but there's really a walkout facing the street, we probably would say the street
Right.
is that. In a situation where the lot slopes downhill from the street and it looks like a 1.5-story house from the street, we'd probably say that main level, facing the street, that's actually probably a little bit below the street would be the main level, even though it has a walkout down below it, it isn't visible.
So we're tying the 12-foot height to the main level. Is that what we're doing here?
No, there's two different things. There's the 12-foot level for counting double if you exceed that, but it's tying the limitation of floor area above the main level to the main level is so, and that's a number to,
Cascade, that's
Yeah, it's
the
cascading a
whole
mass.
plane. That's.
So if you had,
There's.
so if you had a gable ceiling on the second level, you'd have the same rule apply to double the square footage.
You would for the area that measures above the
Right.
12 feet.
So it doesn't matter whether it's the main level or the second level, it's wherever that occurs in the house.
Correct. Yeah, that,
But it would only be above where it's above 17 feet because you get 5 feet on a floor area.
we'd write it at 12. We wouldn't write it at 12 and then give a bonus. I think Mike actually said it. I'm trying to think how he said it. If it's under 5 feet, it doesn't count as density. If it's above 12 feet in floor to ceiling height, then it counts double. I think was how he had
Okay,
phrased it.
we need to write that in there.
And then the other thought that was on the table there was that the top floor is not as large a floor plane as the primary.
That's right.
Floor.
Or the floor under the
Yeah.
top floor.
Yeah, that the top floor has to be smaller in floor area.
Maybe just the highest floor cannot exceed 75%
Something like
of
that.
any floor below it or.
Exactly.
Square foot, all thing.
Does this create a situation where you are gaming the system to have greater site disturbance because you're making your main level? That's what you said earlier.
15%, I calculated it. Because if you have a rectangular house, but now you have to have this 75%, you have to expand your base 15%.
That's actually not all bad on these lots. I mean, let's say that to get some cascade of mass, your footprint grows by 15 or 20%, but we're talking about large lots anyway. That's not all bad. Is that more disturbance? Yeah, but probably not nearly as much disturbance as the driveway, garage apron, retaining walls, things like that. You're in a sense, you're trying to get these homes to lay with the land more, to follow the topography more. And that's always a
To the
good
lower
thing.
level, they may just
Tuck
push
into
out,
the
or,
hill more.
they may
yeah.
push out down the hill.
Yeah.
And it will create, and that'll break up that.
Yeah,
huge
another
plane.
really great example of this is a place in California called Sea Ranch. And it's been around a long time, but Sea Ranch is really known for homes that, and not far from your place, but
I was just in Sea Ranch.
for you, I'm
Yeah.
jealous. But it's known as environmentally sensitive design where the architecture has a cascade of mass and follows the topography and things like that. Genesee, just west of Golden and Lakewood, did that pretty effectively too. So there's definitely
Yeah, I think that we can definitely touch on site disturbance when we get to
yeah.
the 7R. Maybe we'll try and wrap this section and move to the other ones. I mean, I think this discussion, in terms of trying to allow architectural diversity without having such a narrow, but also creating code that controls for, I guess, the appearance of mass. It's really trying to strike that balance and
Yeah, articulation of mass.
I want to point out that in our expensive dirt every house is gonna maximize the bottom, the footprint. They're gonna go right to the setbacks. That's what's gonna happen in Weisshorn. We all know that too, right?
I wouldn't say they usually are right on the setback for maybe 2 of the 4, but I would say the lots are generally big enough where that hasn't been the case. And because of the square footage limitations, like you'd really have to like build out just that.
I guess I'm thinking places like the Highlands or, the new subdivision on Peak 8.
I mean, I think ones that have a tight disturbance envelope, that's probably the case. Like older subdivisions like the Weisshorn that have pretty big lots, it's maybe a little bit more common on the smaller where it's under a quarter acre, but some of the ones that once you get above a quarter acre to a half acre, you just don't, because we have there's the 1 to 4 FAR that controls the maximum above ground, but then there's also just a ceiling that they hit. And so you have to build all in one level to really fill that.
But it
the
depends also
envelope.
on how steep the roof, the lot is. As you flatten out, you widen out, because that way it's less stairs. Anyway, that's besides the point.
That I thought of. So you're limiting the top floor to 75% of the floor area. Well, they can put all that in the front of the house. So it's just in the back where no one sees it. Like, is it really controlling how the house appears? Because they can play with that.
So the way you do that is what that previously mentioned, where in my Evergreen neighborhood, you can go up like 26 feet and then you have to step back according to the bulk plane.
You can do something like that.
Yeah.
But just with this 75% floor area, I don't really know if we're going to achieve what you guys
Well,
are.
you limit the overall contiguous wall height.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain, like you get to a certain height and you have to do one of the suggested treatments in the language in addition, and
Yeah.
that's the relative
There's
portion.
language in there to break it up,
Yeah.
yeah.
Can he? Yeah.
Any final thoughts or?
You
where
have
we-
my sympathies. This is hard to articulate.
It really is.
It's funny because I was thinking in those meetings that we had and super appreciative and how much thought the team put into it. And, we met twice for an hour and a half and it seemed like we were just flying through, or like it felt like we just started and, we're having these types
I
of
was kind of
discussions.
disappointed we were done because I didn't think we were finished,
Yeah. I mean, as evidenced by this discussion, there's a lot to talk about, but I have a question. Was this 12 feet a recommendation of that panel?
No.
No?
Or
Where-
16, wasn't it?
Neither.
That was kind of after the fact of,
Where did this 12 feet come from?
Is the floor, that's what we would count as a floor? Right? That's what we.
Well, we're debating where to put that height. Aspen has 16.
13 for the first 2 floors
Yeah.
and 12 after that.
So you,
I think it was just something else when we were looking at the various codes. You're like, oh, that's probably a good point. If you're limiting floor area, you probably need to limit your lofted space, otherwise that limitation could easily just be absorbed because they'd take a quarter of that space and just loft it. And then,
Correct.
I like the 12 feet.
so I think it was just kind of an extrapolation of looking at the ones that did have a floor area limitation. It seemed
But a
that
12-foot height ends up limiting how big and lofted you can have a great room, which I think is a good idea personally, but
12 is real. I mean, 16 is generous, 12 is,
right, that's the point I'm making, because I've built a number of houses that
yeah,
16 or higher.
If that's a point, 14 could be the compromise.
exactly.
So what are the architectural ratios? You say the bigger the room. So we've got a room that's 40 feet wide. This is the living room, everything room. And we're only going to let it go up 12 feet in the front.
So if you want a room that big,
Well, that's probably what.
I mean, I think the compromise, we're not saying you can't have it taller. It's just you're to use some of your square footage.
Yeah.
To it, because kind of like, again, using the balloon analogy, like we're actually looking at from the outside, the perception of how big it is. We don't know if there's a second level above there or not, but if you want to choose to kind of have that grand living room and go taller, which people may do. They may choose to then kind of limit their square footage somewhere else. I guess it limits the total amount of above ground density as well as the total amount of that
Mhm.
above main level density. So it makes you budget a little bit more with your space.
So are we trying to make a decision today on,
I think we're trying to get some recommendations so we can go to the council and
The other
continue.
thing, one more comment on that. The architectural scale and style of Vail is completely different. You know, we've got a strong vernacular of simpler buildings. Vail's got 8 and 10-story buildings. I mean, the 16-foot may work there, but I think that's too high here.
I agree.
For good reason.
Even on these huge lots.
Yeah,
I lean towards a 12.
agree.
Seems low to me.
Is that a small house?
You can go taller. It's just that you have to,
Yeah. Yeah, my living room is 12, but it's, you know, peaked like
Just end
this.
up with more square footage, more density.
Your density.
It doesn't limit somebody building a 12,000 square foot
Yeah.
house if they have the lot for it.
right.
I have a giant great room and one bedroom, that's fine.
And this applies to massive houses anyway, so.
So what would you?
We
vote?
can do it on our house.
You want something higher?
Oh, I don't know. I think 12 seems a little low to me, but
I think one of the things, and to me, without modeling it for everybody to really look at it, it's really hard to conceptualize what that 12 feet is.
We're not saying you can't do it. Chris's point was extremely valid. You might repeat that. We're not saying you can't do it.
Used with that, you basically have to budget. So if you want to go above that 12, you may want to go to 20. But if you go above it, then you basically have to reduce that square footage somewhere else in the house. So it's kind of like,
Exactly the intent.
so like if the balloon can only get to a certain size, well, if you've used that lofted space, then somewhere over here has to be brought in. If you're kind of shrinking the balloon and it's more horizontal, you can push it that way. But I think like the balloon, the push and pull is a good analogy. Like, so if you start with just a round balloon and you poke it, it could expand up, but kind of get narrower, or it could go the other way. But there's only so much overall volume, if you will, that you can achieve on the site if you're establishing, controls with density and then also kind of a secondary level.
But if you're using your great room example, 40 by 40, 1,600 square feet. If you want to vault it, okay, that's 3,200 square feet. That's how much you're going to have to budget for that great room. You still got a lot left
Yeah.
potentially.
And you can always make it, lower on one end and then you only lose the square footage for the high end. Once it hits the 12 feet, right? 'Cause once my roof
Yeah.
hits the 12 feet,
Mhm.
then whatever's out here qualifies as square feet, so. Yeah.
So in a sense, it is probably one of the more effective in terms of controlling the appearance of mass. For all the other things we're trying to do to kind of game the perception. That one actually does control it.
Yeah.
And it's easy to understand, which is worth a lot.
So taking what you were saying, Mark, so if a 40 by 40, great room. If we have a 12-foot limit, but we increase it to 16 feet, that means we're giving them 6,400 more square feet that they could play with elsewhere in their, by limiting it to 12, if they go to 16, they have to take away 6,400 square feet from somewhere else.
1,600,
40 by 40,
be 1,600.
1,600.
and that's 4 feet. So, just the 16.
That'd be cubic feet.
Okay, got it. Never mind. I was thinking 3 dimensions, like.
Gotta think simpler.
Okay, well, let's move on. I mean, I think great discussion. And I think as it's proven, there's a lot to talk about,
There is.
related to it. Everything from someone stating like, well, I don't really find this objectionable in the first place, to we need to ratchet this down. So there's a lot of room within the continuum for for feedback.
Are we gonna address this again? Because again, I wish Andy Stabile was here with his computer. He could quickly do a 3D model on his computer to show the difference,
Yeah.
just like that.
Yeah.
And to have that 3D model here would really solve a lot of things for all of us, I think.
I think it would really clear it up.
It would really clear it up. You could, are you have CAD? Can you do it? Do you have 3D modeling on CAD?
No, but the town of Frisco requires all those drawings be submitted with their plan sets. And I guarantee I have numerous plan sets.
Look at 12 feet, 14 foot, 16 foot.
Not right now.
Yeah, not really.
On a given footprint would be really helpful, I think.
I agree.
Yeah, I think that in terms of like probably our budget for this, in terms of modeling, and then there's so many contingencies with different lots, like I think there would be some visual, you'd be able to see it for a specific lot, but then you go to a different lot and it'd be like, well, that actually looks different because it's a different configuration.
Right, but we have to have a baseline. And I'm not talking about having a middle, I mean, literally what I'm talking about, that 3D in CAD could be done in, I know Andy could do it
They're just stick frames. They're not-
15 minutes. He could build that 3D.
You could make maybe a few for us to look at, like this is with 12, this is 15.
Same building, but with 12, 16.
Yeah.
The same box, really. We only need to look at that
Graphic
box.
always helps.
Anyway,
But basically, I think what you're saying is if we allow 16, conceivably, how much bigger will that house be?
Well, for starters, it's gonna be 4 feet taller.
right.
They'll
They
use,
still have a height restriction.
I know, but,
Well, I think like with the height restriction limiting that, if you give them the 4 feet, it could be the difference between 1,600 extra feet or not. Like 12 by being, some people have thrown out, that seems like, oh, that seems a little low for having that grand room. Well, then they probably do need to go above and use twice as much density. But if 16 feet is kind of like, well, that's almost there. I was thinking 18, but I can live with 16. Then you've just essentially given them 1,600 more feet.
Yeah.
So I think that like if you are to establish it, you probably almost want to establish it a little bit low where they have to make that decision. There isn't like,
Well, this is a point. I mean, part of this is, I think the reason this came up, people don't want to reduce the visual mass of these homes. It's still going to come down to what town council wants. So I think it's as important for us to see this. It's even more important for town council to appreciate what allowing that higher height difference will mean in terms of, the goal that they have of reducing, these massive homes.
And I don't want to belabor the point, but I'm just thinking about homes. I've built some pretty massive homes in this town with some pretty massive ceiling heights. And the only reason I bring that up, I think, well, 12 would have brought those way down.
no, I think 12 they would have used some of their density budget on it. I think people are still gonna build some rooms taller than 12, but
Yeah,
this is a
but-
carrot to.
But a client comes in, typical client comes in for a high dollar house, they have a program. That program is generally 5 bedrooms, 6 or 7 bathrooms, a family room, and a great room, and an office. That's generally the program.
Agree.
I know it by heart. And so, they're gonna want that program. And are we unreasonably limiting their great room experience by 12 feet? I'm not sure. And I built a bunch of them and I can't picture it in my head, which is why I keep on coming back to the modeling. I'm not sure.
Well, I think the modeling is important to convey it to the council and the public and us.
I don't want to say 12 feet right here and then go back and go, whoa, we made a mistake there.
It's kind of irrelevant about what the lot topography is. If you just take a typical house and you don't take that into consideration, you can look at A and you can look at B. One has got the 14, 16 in, the other's got the 12. You can see the difference
In the modeling.
in the model,
Yes.
right, in the model.
That's
And
I
the
think your point-
topography is really irrelevant.
But I think that point, like it probably comes down to, if it's effective, it would be the different, if you're using the 40 by 40 example, it's the difference between 1,600 feet more or less. And so if that's the program, but they still want that great room experience, they're probably between all those other elements, so they have to trim it down. Like the garage may have to be 200 square feet less. They may have to game, the master bedroom might have to be 150 square foot less. The office might be 100.
And I understand that. Look, I actually like smaller houses. So if it was given to me, I would say I want them all to be no more than 2,500 square feet. Because I don't believe that anybody needs a house bigger than that,
Yeah.
personally.
we
But
wanna-
that said, what I'm trying to get at is I just can't picture in my mind if, we want these people who are spending a lot of money on a lot to get the program, the average program, which I just named the average program of what
Mhm.
people want in this town. And are we, I'm not saying we are, but I'm questioning, are we unreasonably by the 12-foot height restricting both? Because you are restricting one or the other. They have to choose. And so they'd say, well, I want the program. I want all of these spaces. And now they've got a great room that is not so great. I actually personally like that better, but that's not what people want. So I'm looking for the happy median there. Is it 12 feet? Is it 14 feet? I'm not sure.
And
I
is it
can't
really
say
going to
right
change?
now, but it is.
And is it really going to change the perceived bulk density of it from the street or from the side of the mountain? Because they're going to make it as wide as they can to get the biggest views. And all they've done is made their house a little less steep.
Not necessarily.
Well,
I guess
but if they're going to definitely optimize.
Don't
their
you think
view.
there's gonna be a fair amount of square footage left over in most cases, though? Because our home size limitations are very generous. So even if you have to use up double for a vaulted area, you still could have thousands of square feet left over on your property for the rest of the programming.
Yeah, I think for some, but I think the homes that people are talking about, like we could use the home, we seem to keep coming back to the well, like that one was built to utilizing almost all their above ground square footage. So like if we would have, I don't know how big their great room is, but let's say it's the 40 by 40. If that were the case, they would have had to have reduced 1,600 square feet less than what they built at home, which would probably be noticeable from the street, but also to Ethan's point, probably would make the owner not happy because it doesn't fulfill all the kind of the
They don't have their
design
media room there.
aspirations that they have.
'Cause I'm thinking about a couple of houses, particularly, 2 houses particularly up in Timber Trail that are 7,500 square feet, which is the new limit, right? And that's the program. Well, maybe a little bit more, but they have big vaulted, I know that they wouldn't be able to get that program and the 12-foot rule on those houses.
I mean, the other thing,
Well-
if you're worried about, I think to Alan's point, we were thinking this would apply to all large lot, single family and duplex throughout town. If you wanted to only limit it to the kind of classic NPP neighborhoods, that would be,
We need to move on.
Yeah.
We could talk around this
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah, and my point is like, so what about, Warriors Mark, because everyone says you had said people are gonna start tearing down stuff there and building bigger, buying 2 lots and.
But those lots are a
building
lot
big stuff
smaller.
there. Well, they'll buy 2 lots
I
and
have
they'll,
2 lots and I have a half acre. So both my lots are a quarter acre and where's.
And you could erase that line and build.
but for like the lower ones that are smaller, that's why we said we wouldn't invoke these for homes that are under 4,500 square feet.
There it is. There it is. I forgot that. You're right. You wouldn't invoke it for
No.
under 45. So that makes the difference, right?
Yeah.
That makes the
Yeah.
difference. Okay, thank you. You solved my
Let's move
my
on.
conundrum.
7 hours.
Sorry to drag that out.
Okay, no. Good discussion and obviously a lot to talk about. So moving on to 7R, I think, really the council had directed us to look at opportunities for positive points, but really from the 3 architects in the group, as well as actually from the first the first work group, it was broader. 7R was definitely in the crosshairs of that group. They felt like that is probably the most punitive policy in the code. And they spoke about, and a lot of this is even from just written comments we had through the process, as well as I think we continued on with that conversation. But there was redundancy where we kind of talked about the same things in multiple sections. You know, we really look at the placement of driveways, but then a lot of times we don't really factor in like where the patio is. Sarah and I actually did go through and look at every single family home, their hard surface from 2020 to 2025. And there wasn't a lot of difference between, in terms of hard surface coverage, between projects that earn -4 or -2 on the driveway, because some of the ones that had longer driveways, they had greater patios, but we were so locked in on the design of the driveway. I mean, if you look at it against the open space policy, which says for residential that you should have at least 30% open space, all of these, no matter how long the driveway are way over that. There's no instance where it's even within double
Be plugged in.
the
I'm on
record.
the phone. My computer didn't.
Susan, we can hear you.
Oh, sorry. Don's trying to get me to move. But
Mute your
Mute
mic.
yourself.
And so what we tried to do is go through and clean up and consolidate areas where there isn't like really a large philosophical change in terms of how we do it, but they did raise the question of there's positive point opportunities in this policy. How come those are never invoked? You know, like using the example, if it's a paved parking lot, it's entirely impervious, and you were to develop something on it, and then now something is 40% pervious versus impervious, or it's like in the Wellington when it was all mine tailings and you're reclaiming that area. How come in the area that's been so totally disturbed and you're actually making it better in terms of ground cover, we've never awarded points? We have awarded for like river restorations. It's been the only case that we've awarded points, but I think that's a fair comment, since we're not afraid to give someone negative points for a 3,000 square foot driveway, but for the lot that is 90% open space, we don't give anything for it. So I mean, I think an argument, Mike was saying about the incremental, maybe the benefit of having the building footprint a little bit bigger to make it look a little less bulky. Most of the site disturbance with one of these projects is just done because it's a platted single family lot. It's not the incremental, 500 square feet because of a larger patio or whatever. So I think there's been a little bit of a creep that has been a complaint from the design community. And I would say it started around 2018 of really scrutinizing site disturbance and applying more points. But that's kind of the genesis of reevaluating policy 7R.
So do we open for questions or?
Yeah.
I mean, what comes up a lot, and it comes up both in the county projects we have in these, is the idea that everyone wants to, on the uphill lots, everyone wants their garage in the back. And so you can't see it, and that's going to mean a big driveway and a lot of site disturbance. And there's a choice if they want that. They could put the garage down below and put an elevator inside the house that none of us have to see. So, I'm not saying where I land on one side or the other, because I'm sure if I had an uphill lot, I'd want my garage in the back and such. But, I know we need to allow it if there's a certain grade, we have to allow them to have a certain amount of garage. But do they have to go another story or two higher for their garage, or why can't they just put it down below?
Yeah, and I think what we had heard, there's a couple things, because there's obviously the one where you kind of create the 3/4 moat by going around, and that's definitely self-inflicted, but in other cases where traditionally we hadn't given points where they need to do a switchback to achieve grade because the envelope or something is, or the
Mhm.
building, the logical building site is,
Yeah, if the envelope's there.
we've more recently been giving them negative points related to that. And they're kind of like, can't we go back to how we traditionally did that? Because there's a grade that engineering requires you to make.
Mhm.
And it's a platted lot, so you shouldn't be inherently penalized for trying to build on your platted lot. I think another point the group brought up was, well, if you read the code, there's a balance between site disturbance and maintaining natural buffers. And so if you actually put some of the utilitarian aspect of the house, whether it be the garage or parking in the back or on the side, you're making that, you're actually buffering that more. You're making it less visible
Nice.
from the street. And they're saying like, you're applying the site disturbance portions here, but you're not looking at the site buffering aspects. And then again, like for some of the larger lots that do have a disturbance envelope and they need to get a driveway just to the envelope, again, that we didn't traditionally penalize them, but there are applications probably in the last 7 or 8 years where we did start applying negative points. So they, I think knowing the history of this policy, originally it was really, overall, we didn't want the whole site scraped and flattened. So you had a flattened or bench site that, that you can read through in there. But in terms of where we've kind of drifted is started to say, well,
Yeah.
this driveway is a little long, so that's to be, 3% more site disturbance, not factoring in that you're the disturbed stuff, the site anyway, this to have proper drainage and other things, but then you'll have vegetation come back. So I think those are the items that have been brought up with the building and design community through the various interactions we've had in this policy or during the policy update.
Susan, do you have anything? Maybe.
I mean, I'm not one in favor of overly long driveways, unless, it's something that's required by the site. I don't, I sort of like the way that you were treating it, Chris.
Anybody else here?
Nice work, Chris.
So yeah, I think it's still ultimately, even how it's written, the revisions, it's up to the commission. We're not really saying it's changing, but we did, I guess, allow some language if you do want to have carve outs for more difficult lots or a more logical placement of homes is kind of like acknowledging that we heard that, but not completely, revising it.
Some flexibility based on the site.
Yeah. Or just having that conversation, just kind of relaying that information.
I can't remember the homes, but some of the projects like on Rounds Road that we approved, there were opportunities, the garage, they could have gone of the driveway. You wouldn't have seen the garage from the road. And instead you see, there was disturbance and driveway and retaining walls that we just didn't have to see.
Yeah, I think they were arguing that even more than the garage though is the parking, because there's usually like a big kind of turnaround
It would have been hidden by trees that were already buffered, would have buffered where it would have been. So it's, anyway, we don't have to belabor it. I think it's, we'll have to review. You leave us the flexibility to review it on a site-by-site basis.
I think they just wanted the opportunity to kind of get some of those things on the record, and so we're carrying
I
it
think
forward.
from the architect's perspective or the applicant, they should come to us for a work session before they come to or plan on 1 or 2 preliminary hearings and try and get our input on it. If they think it's gonna be pushing the envelope on some, which some do and some don't.
Well, great. Well, I appreciate that for ceding the time to the first one and getting through this one more efficiently. But we'll move on to positive points. And again, we didn't have as much detail on here. This is more of a possible list. It's, I think realistically, we want to calibrate the code in a way that it is balanced. So there are proportional positive point opportunities to go along with the negative point. But again, it's stuff that we really want to incentivize. And in being tasked with coming up positive points, we don't need to go so overboard that we adopt everything, but we're just interested. These are some of the ideas that we're throwing out. It seems like building hardening has gotten some traction. That's a priority. We've had work sessions in the past on that one, but then these are just other ones that we're kind of throwing out, both from our current work group as well as just feedback we've had from the public in the past. And these are just kind of general gut feeling point assessments. So nothing that, we're kind of thinking maybe the relative like proportionality of it. So happy to take any comments related to any of these or.
Yeah, I mean, we've got quite a few ideas here and they all have some merit. We would not suggest that we adopt all of them or then we'd be out of whack once again. We'd have so many positive points available. So we'd look for your thoughts on what you think are some of the better ideas here for us to pursue.
I have a question on adaptive reuse. I'm certainly in favor of giving people positive points for not scraping, but and I've seen this done, say in Washington, D.C., where they've, it's really more a question of preserving certain historic elements of buildings that are being reused. But in Breckenridge, I don't know how this would be done, what they would be keeping from, say a 60s era home that could be reused.
Actually, Susan, and if you, we're starting to spend some time in Boulder, and there's many neighborhoods in Boulder that were like post-war or 70s era where almost every home originally was identical. And people have done amazing things just by changing a little bit of the facade, adding an additional 500 square feet, and the home looks completely different. And we have good architects here. There's a lot that could be done without having to scrape a home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and that's certainly, a goal that I support.
And I think it's a little bit different than, the historic preservation where you're really trying to lock it into a character from a point in time. This is really more about just trying to preserve building materials or, not relocate the mass to a different part of the site to create more site disturbance. So, you might be thinking it's more the Weisshorn homes today, but it might actually be more like the Highlands homes of the 90s or other things where there's a cost incentive for, preserving more of the existing home where the land isn't as valuable as it is like adjacent to the core of town, like you see in the Weisshorn or a slopeside development like Timber Trail, where people will just do what they want because that's the price range that they're willing to spend.
There's a tipping point when it comes to this. And a lot of things go into that analysis that deal with the age of the home. If you have mechanical systems and electrical systems that are obsolete and you have portions of the building that are decayed, eaten by animals, whatever, it becomes does it cost more to keep what's here in the name of preservation or not scraping than it does to start all over? And that's an analysis that only the owner and the builder can make. But a lot of times it's a lot cheaper to tear the house down than to try to cobble together something that really is from another era with the technology, the building materials and everything else in terms of the energy efficiency and the longevity of the end product.
And that's great. But if you do it, you get 2 positive points.
So that might be the trade. They'll spend the extra money.
And that's a good point,
It's a positive point. They can get their long driveway.
This one, if you look at the scale, this is probably, in a lot of cases, it might be a lot more complicated than some of the other things for 2 positive points.
Yeah,
So
for 2 points.
you might not have a lot of takers, but we also, if you really think like well, why are we even doing this? Because no one's going to do it. I'll gladly take that feedback as well.
I actually think for this one, I was surprised others he had positive 3. I think this is like the most valuable one. If anything should be 3 points, I thought adaptive reuse should be 3. I thought that's a lot more valuable than an internal sprinkler system or
Yeah, I agree.
some vines on a wall.
Should be 4 plus up to +4 maybe or something.
Especially if you factor in the building hardening provisions, like this one's gonna be hard to meet because you're gonna have to kind of redo it anyway.
Yeah.
Redo the siding or roofing
Siding.
if you're making big additions or big improvements.
That actually is a fair point, because if you do have to redo all the exterior material, then you kind of have to preserve the guts, which is in a lot of cases, I think also maybe
Yeah,
where
that
Mark was
factors in.
going,
Tipping point.
that's.
Hmm.
I guess maybe we do have to think about, like, if it's something that, I mean, there's definitely situations in our code where it's like, well, in theory you can do it, but realistically you can't. So we really don't want to set our code up for things that it's so difficult to achieve, particularly for a low amount of
Also,
points.
another argument why if anything should get a max points like 3 points or maybe even more, a multiple of 2 to 4, based upon the percentage of the final home that materials that were original or reused. Which, oh, go ahead.
no.
No, and then in general, and all the other ones, I think what would make these, there's issues about what are the metrics? So and then how do we, for some of them, they're ongoing. So how do we measure, monitor, or enforce? So like, you can only sprinkle for, have irrigation for 2 years. Who's going to monitor that down the road?
Nobody.
Or to have an internal sprinkler system, does that automatically get logged and tracked and permitted by the fire department? And do they ensure that it gets inspected at regular intervals and it's still working and such? Yeah. Okay. And then the green roof and walls, what percentage is a Kudzo vine growing a few months a year enough? And, does it have to be something that we see year round? I don't know if there's enough vegetation, because the value of that is only for about 4 to 5 months a year, because the rest of the time, whatever is green is not going to be green.
And how much water does it take to keep a wall like that alive?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Go through the list. The building hardening, I think, is great at 3 points. The interior sprinklers, how much benefit to the community are we getting? The fire department loves it, but really, how much benefit to the community are we getting with interior sprinklers? So,
And what does that cost? I mean,
and it's a high cost.
it is, okay, because I was
People are
thinking,
gonna, to get that, you're gonna
I mean,
spend
the EV
money.
chargers, the cost came down so far that it was just easy for everyone to throw EV chargers.
Right, I was gonna get to that.
Yeah, okay.
Point, Jay Nelson has provided a lot of information. That's one that they're really high on.
Oh, I know
And,
they are.
and they believe that, a sprinkler is probably the best way to preventing a fire from spreading to the homes adjacent to it. I forget, do you remember what the data he was saying, like of how much containment? If you have a sprinkler system of confining that fire to the site. So in terms of, public benefit, the way they describe it, there's actually quite a high degree. If you have a fire there and you get sprinklered, it's to prevent it to a large degree from spreading, unlike something that's maybe purely aesthetic.
Okay,
And are these interior sprinklers, are they just for like the kitchen and high burn risk areas? Or
No,
the
it's
whole,
house.
you have to do the whole house?
Anyway, I'd like to continue going through the list here. The green roofs and walls, I agree with what Alan was saying. Waste aversion is a great idea, but we tried that before and it didn't work. How do you monitor that?
Yeah, well, the idea right now is this is to get people starting to do it
Yeah,
and to show that they've recycled some of the materials at the landfill, basically show receipts from that. It's not to achieve 100% recycling or that.
so you give them points on the front side, and then they have to prove and show the receipts down the line. But
Mhm.
you've already given them the points.
Would there be a percentage of the building materials that they would have to bring to the landfill?
Or just basically, you get a point
I think
for a certain amount of tons?
figure out a way, a trigger in the system to make that work. This is really like, remember when we first did HERS? We
Mhm.
gave points for people just getting a HERS rating,
Right.
even if they didn't achieve a certain score. And so it's partly the thought of getting the materials management and recycling into the nomenclature, into the regular, what's being done on every job site. So that's kind of the idea. It's a first step in that direction.
Mhm.
The below density development, I like the idea of that one. I'm just going through the list and giving my feedback. I agree with what Alan and Susan were saying on the adaptive reuse, positive points for not scraping. Water conservation, and you say gray water and then deactivate irrigation. Those are two different things. Gray water systems are not really allowed by environmental health. Is that correct? What kind of gray water systems are we talking about?
Washing machines, discharge.
Right, but where does that go?
Yeah. Where does it go?
Well, I don't believe the environmental health department allows that, do they?
don't
The
think it's a
state
good
just
idea,
came
but
out
that's what
with
it is.
standards that will take place in 2026 that are going to allow for it.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. So we're probably not going to jump into it right away, but it is something that we'll be looking into.
I think it's a great idea. My house that I built in California, all gray water. The only thing that goes into my septic system is black water. Everything else is gray water and it goes out. So I believe in that big time. I just was asking the question.
It works in your situation where you have a septic system. It doesn't necessarily work
Exactly.
in this municipal.
Right. And I don't want to get too far. I'm just throwing my ideas out there. Then in deactivating the water of the irrigation after 2 summer seasons, don't landscaping companies recommend longer than that for trees to establish? I thought they did.
I thought it was usually 2 years.
Minimum of 2 years, but better.
Specify 2 years. It depends on how large your trees are when you install.
Okay.
You'd
Yeah.
make a big impact if you just required everybody to have a rainwater monitoring device on their irrigation system that cuts off the irrigation, overrides it on days when there's precipitation.
Okay, and then the other two, enhanced controls on heat tape and the smart breaker panels. Are we giving a point, kind of like the EV thing, where it's such an easy point to get? The breaker panel, that's an easy thing to do. It doesn't cost hardly anything to install that breaker panel.
Well, I think similar to the EV one is maybe they're not widely used at this point, but we want to encourage them to be used. I'm not as familiar, it was thrown out.
I'm not,
And so it might be something that to get traction and have it become kind of the standard. Maybe we only have it in the code for a couple of years until it really just becomes a regular thing.
That, like the EV thing, that's a good point. So the enhanced controls on heat tape,
We have an on-off switch.
what exactly is the enhanced controls? I could say that I enhance my controls because I go out there and turn them off when I think that's not necessary. So we have to specify what is an enhanced control.
Like the
The-
10 ones have, you can buy this little
Yeah.
thing that it
But-
monitors.
It's almost like an app where you can kind of see real time what you're using versus the person who's like, I turned it on and I forgot I've had it on.
I almost feel that both of those smart panels at some point should become absolute requirements for new construction or renovations. I mean, I'm trying to put those in on my heat tape now and it's so expensive to retrofit it. And why, they should be in there right off the bat.
Anyway, that's my input on those.
But maybe it's a relative positive point for a while and then
Yeah.
you should consider in the building code that stuff becomes absolute.
I think that's, for those 1 point type things where I think particularly those are the things that we're encouraged to look at is something that's not the most expensive, most complicated, to just get like 1 point. But with that said, they should be like rotated out. Like if it becomes this commonplace, get it out. Once people are aware of it and they're just doing it.
That's a good point.
That's
I
what I
like
said.
that.
And then look for the next thing. And like we said, like we,
Mike,
That's
how
my-
many points did we give BGV for their smart heat system?
was it?
16 or something?
Four.
Elaine, maybe we could.
And that's why we're recommending a lower.
Maybe we could have each
Everyone.
commissioner weigh in like Ethan just did on
Okay.
kind of their thoughts on which one of these they like best or.
All right. Susan, you want to start?
Sure.
Second.
Okay, well, I think we're all in favor of the building hardening thing. I was in favor of the waste diversion. And also adaptive reuse. I think below density development can work. I think that the water conservation, if there's a way to make that work. As far as the irrigation is concerned, it's not just trees. People have irrigation for other reasons than just getting trees settled. And so, I think we should think about that. Or maybe, unless you're discouraging people from having other kinds of landscaping. As far as the heat tape and the smart breakers, I think that, having those at the outset probably makes the most sense.
Thanks, Susan. Would you like, we'll just start down here. Do you want to go through the list? We're just running through what you like the best. And any. We'll just go down.
Building hardening, I think it's probably easier for me to say what I don't like. And the water conservation, the gray water and the deactivation, I think more thought needs to go into that because that's kind of somebody threw that out and it stuck to the wall and it got on the list. The enhanced controls for heat tape, I like that. I don't know what the smart breaker panels are, so I can't really speak to that. The waste diversion, I think that's a wonderful idea. I don't think it works at all unless there's a market for materials that are going to be recycled.
Mhm.
And at this point, there really isn't one.
I think the three that have the most public benefit are building hardening, low density development, and enhanced controls on heat tape, because they're everywhere. But I also wondered if there's a double bonus for a below density development and transferring that development to a workforce housing project or some other project of public good. The rest are okay, but probably don't rise to the level of those three.
Just as a point of information, is a property owner able to sell density that he doesn't use?
Yes, we do allow that in the code.
Could you sell it back to the development bank? How does that work?
Not to the TDR bank. We'd have to go to the code again, but we do allow density to be moved within the town. There are some limitations on that.
Okay.
I'd want to go back to just verify before I just say, yeah, it can happen anywhere. It's not quite that simple, but kind of Mike's thought is kind of an intriguing one, is like you leave density on the table.
And that
Maybe that goes towards a workforce housing project somewhere to cover the density that's needed there.
And then you get points for that.
the financial advantage if you could sell it, or you could take a tax deduction for donating it. That might be more valuable than a building point when you're trying to get through planning.
Yeah, good point. Yep.
Yeah.
Matt.
Yeah, building hardening. Is that would that be awarding someone's positive points for something that is going to be required anyway?
No, it'd be for going above and beyond what's required by the new state code.
Gotcha.
Which is a lot.
And then that's why there's the positive 3 is because they kind of go to the extra level. You really have to kind of do the platinum approach to it?
I initially thought no for for the interior sprinklers, but in light of the public benefit about the, from a house to house perspective, I'm for that. Waste diversion, if it works, yes, for sure. Below density development, like there's some moving parts there for sure. I do like the adaptive reuse. I actually really like the gray water provision in there. I think that could gain a lot of traction if done correctly. And the heat tape and the breaker panels, I just see them as the new EV. It's fine if we cycle them out after a certain amount of time. And the other one that the development located on highly disturbed areas and parking lots is encouraged and eligible for positive points. I think that might be, I originally thought that as like kind of home cooking a little bit because it applies mainly to maybe town projects, or town funded development projects. So I kind of was questioning that one a little bit. So, but yeah, that's what I got.
Alan.
Well, I guess I gave my opinion on some, so
Okay.
I agree on building hardening, sprinklers, interior sprinklers. I mean, if it is a huge cost and it really is a positive benefit to neighbors, I would support it. No to the green roofs or walls. Waste diversion, I think maybe a way to do that is, scaling points based upon the tonnage that gets recycled. I would support below density development. Adaptive reuse, yes. Water conservation, I mean, I think it would probably be a big cost to have to create 2 sets of drainage systems for black and gray water. So I would support some points for that. And then I think, yeah, the heat tape controls and smart breaker panels, I think is a short-term thing that should just become required after a few years.
All right, I'll go through my list. I'm actually in favor of all of the things listed. And my favorites are definitely anything for fire. So building hardening and interior sprinklers. I also had a suggestion. I didn't see anywhere on here about, so we have enhanced controls on heat tape, but I was thinking maybe we could add where they have, south sloping roofs or a certain percentage of the roofs that face south, so there's not as much need for heat tape. And then I also had another idea because people seem to be concerned about light coming from these massive big windows now. Maybe where they have to have self-closing lights or shades that close half an hour after it gets dark, something like that. They'd have that in their house on those windows.
All right. Well, thanks for your attention to this. Great conversation. Obviously, a lot to consider, and Mark and I will discuss kind of the notes and next steps for the council.
Thank you for bringing this to us. I think this was a really valuable conversation, and yeah.
And I know a lot of the council do, rewatch, pay attention to the minutes. So I think that by spending the time that we did tonight, in addition to preparing the memo, there'll be a lot for them to consider.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks, Chris.
No, thank you, Susan.
Yeah, sorry for the technical difficulties.
No, I think by having everyone here, it was a very productive work session.
All right, do we have,
Most of these controllers.
do I just close the meeting or do you do town council?
Yeah, we'll do the town council update now. Yeah. And once again, just thanks to Chris, has been a ton of work. And Sarah's been helping out a lot with it also. So, yeah, it's been, we're really fortunate to have Mike helping us as well with the committee. And we really had I think it was a good group. We got through a lot of material, like Chris said, in a short period of time. So you guys got 2 weeks ago, you got the McCain plan update from Duke and the consultant team. The council got that same presentation last week and they're fully supportive of it. Let's go forward with it, implement it. So the plan is to start implementing some of those ideas next year. The one outstanding thing it's a little beyond just the scope of the McCain open space is where the final rec path alignments are going to be determined. Are we going to keep the existing alignment and have this new one that was kind of shown? And so that's still a discussion the council has to have, and we'll probably have that in the next couple of months with them. Up on that. So, but other than that, yeah, I mean, council was, like you guys were, pretty supportive of what they saw. So hopefully we'll have some things happening out there on McCain next year. I think the idea is, and by 2027 to, have, open it to the public. So, although we won't finish everything next year. In terms of legislative matters, the ICC code amendments went for first reading. The whole slew of codes, it's going from 2018 to 2024. And so that was approved on first reading. It'll go to second reading next week. You guys are going to get a full update on that. Rick Fout's going to come in with Philip Sweat and give you guys the lowdown on all that at our next meeting. So you get more background on that, but that is moving forward. And interesting facts from the Breck E-Ride this year, 28,000 riders for the season.
Oh.
Lots of 150 rides a day. So it's, those are our e-bikes. And it's just really been pretty popular. So, yeah, that's pretty much it for the council meeting.
I'd like to comment on the McCain just real quickly. I was up on Ellen's
feature.
That was featured
Yeah.
the other day, looking down at the new parking lot.
Yeah.
It's road base, and next door in the McCain and that is asphalt.
Yeah, they're different colors.
Yeah.
And the road base stands out like a sore thumb. I suggest putting the asphalt shavings on it, millings. Just my input, I was like, whoa, that jumps out. My input.
You can sure see the parcels now that are being defined on, it wasn't that long ago. You just looked down at McCain, it was just one big open area. Now, we've had, Vista Verde going in, the solar panels, the water plant, and now those southern parcels are defined and you can see actually what's left of open space.
Yeah, but as far as those lots, like you see the solar panels, black.
Yep.
You see the new parking area, which is light colored, and then you see the public works area that they've covered with asphalt millings. And because those are black or dark and the solar panels are dark and everything else is darker, that new parking lot jumps out at you. I was really surprised. I just
But
wanted to say.
they consider it still temporary, so they don't want to pave it.
I'm not talking pavement, I'm talking
Yeah.
asphalt millings, which
Yeah.
are cheap and easy to get.
Yeah.
Melt though.
Anyway,
'Cause it's
What's
dark. It's gonna help it melt because it's black.
that's a good point, but
Yeah,
that
another reason.
bolsters my reason. Anyway, just thought I'd throw that out there, Mark. I saw that the other
Thank
day.
That's it. I'll just adjourn the meeting. Do I have to say anything official? I adjourn the meeting at 7:29 p.m.
You're right,
gonna
be the same this year.
Is
there discussion on that?
talk a little bit about price. That's the one thing they didn't resolve, I don't think, but yeah.
Yeah, they had the whole discussion on the unlocking fee,
Right.
which it's funny, because I guess getting a membership as an employee, I don't know what the unlocking,
Right, I buy the season pass because I love them. I think they're great. And I think $50 for the entire summer is
It's a
that's a deal.
screaming deal if
Yeah.
you use it a lot. It is.
They need to put it at the golf course for me.
They've got a bunch of new stations they're talking about, so.
Okay.
They're being really aggressive. I just bought a new e-bike.
What'd you buy?
I bought a, at Avinton. Yeah. No, I think at the commuter, I got the